It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Currently in the box next to me, it's Anthony Haney, super producer of the show. Hey, Anthony. In that box in a little bit, joining us from LA will be Clinton Yates, you just heard in the hour open, talking about, he was telling me that one of his Around the Horn colleagues, he wouldn't tell me which one, Anthony, so be a surprise coming up at 4:30. But someone that I wouldn't expect is going to the Commanders game on Monday, and I would be shocked by it. And there's a whole discussion that we need to have off of it. So I trust Clinton enough that if he says there's a segment for it, that we'll have a segment out of it. But I'm curious to see who it is at 4:30.
And you said ESPN.
Yeah, someone from Around the Horn.
Around the Horn, okay.
Right, because the game's in Cincinnati. There's no one based in Cincinnati. So someone, and it sounded like a Commanders adjacent someone, is making the trip to Cincy. I don't know whether it's as a reporter or as a fan, but he was like, this is a big deal. And I was like, okay, save it for the air. And so 4:30, we'll talk it out. That'll be fun. Also today, 5 o'clock, we will talk to Patrick Peterson, our newest Odyssey Sports NFL insider. Patrick, of course, the longtime NFL cornerback. And it was funny because earlier this week when we were meeting with the boss man, I was like, hey, do we have any corners? Because that's a kind of a big topic right now. And he's like, actually, Patrick Peterson just became our new Odyssey Sports Insider. And I was like, great. How fast can we get him? And so Pat is going to come on with us at 5 o'clock. Very excited for that. Of course, we'll go around the NFL. We'll do our pick six at 6 today. With it being a Friday, we will... that's typically a Thursday schedule. This will be the coordinator edition of the Pick Six at 6. So you hear plenty from Joe Whitt and Cliff Kingsbury. And there was a lot that Joe Whitt had to say today that I thought was interesting, including some comments we'll get to in about 10 minutes about the play style, who's measuring up to snuff, who isn't. But, Anthony, if you're in attendance for a record-setting night, why would you start your radio show anywhere else?
You wouldn't.
All right, so let's talk about last night. The Mystics season is over. That is sad. They got to the point where the tank job had already been they won too much later in the season. So it would have been nice if they got in and made the playoffs. They get themselves at least 2 games. They probably would have played 2 games in New York realistically, and that would have been that. The Liberty are great. Instead, it will be the Dream of Atlanta, who will probably be the sacrificial lamb. But they did go out with a bang in more ways than one. First and foremost, a historic night for the W at Capital One Arena. And DC reminding everybody just how great of a basketball town that it is. While, yes, many of the 20,000 plus there, if not the majority of them, are there to see Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. By the end, Anthony, Clark was on the bench because the Fever are headed to the playoffs, and Christy Sides in the second half was like, all right, we got our sweat for the night with our starters. Let's get some bench players some minutes and not risk injury. But what we got was a tremendous game that went down to the wire. Indiana misses a shot at the buzzer that would have won it. So the Mystics finished the season on a win. Unfortunately for them, Chicago lost and Atlanta won. So that combination of results last night means Atlanta goes to the playoffs. The Mystics will have the 4th best odds in the upcoming lottery. But it was a really great atmosphere. And it's the kind of thing, Anthony, that I think the crowd and the game and everything about it was good enough without a huge night from Clark. She was very good. She had 8 points and 8 assists in 20 minutes. So Caitlin certainly, hits a step back 3 at one point. She did the things that the people that went to see Caitlin got to see their ounce of Caitlin and get to go home happy. But it's not like once they realized she wasn't coming back in the game, anybody left. And I think that's the thing that I hope is a draw moving forward for the league. Is that people might get drawn into a game or go to a game because of Caitlin or because of Angel or Nika Mule or Ali Edwards or any of these rookies that they followed from college on in. But once they're there, as 20,000 record crowd for the WNBA in its history last night saw at Capital One Arena, there's plenty more to watch. And I think if you had done a satisfaction survey for anybody that went to the game last night, or rate 1 through 5, Anthony, I do dare say that there would be a lot of 5s on that survey.
A ton of fives. Definitely a very thrilling ending to the game. The Mystics, apparently the Mystics were down, what was it, 18-2?
They were, which you didn't know, which is funny because, so peel back the curtain a little bit. I obviously did the show from there yesterday. Anthony was sitting right where he is right now in the control room in our Navy Yard studios. And so he went there after. And so, Anthony, you could have, by the way, listened in the car because we are your radio home for the Mystics. Silly goose. But we Anthony did not see the first part of the game. He was trying to get to the game because it tipped off right at 7 o'clock, right after our show ended. And so he gets there. The Mystics had already come back at that point, and it actually built up at one point a pretty significant lead, double-digit lead of their own. Yeah. And so at the end of the game, I actually had to drop some equipment with Anthony that he could bring back to the station today. So we watched the end of the game, the final minute together, and he's like, dang, we survived that one. We shouldn't, that's 17-point lead. How is this even close? And I'm like, buddy, you knew we were down 18-2 at the start, right? And the bigness of your eyes, Anthony, let me know in that very moment. No, you did not know that they were up or down 18-2 to start when Clark and company were cooking, the starters for Indiana.
Yeah, I did not know that. So that made the game even more interesting when I found that out. But yeah, the fact that the Fever had, two chances at the end of the game to actually go ahead and, steal the game made it all, the more interesting just because we had the lead. They hit some timely shots. We couldn't buy a basket towards the end. And then when we got a couple of good looks, we didn't convert them. So it was just, man, and I was on my feet. I was on my feet. I was so excited. I was recording the end of the game. And yeah, a lot of people definitely
you were in full fan mode.
I was. I love to be in full fan mode just because I didn't get to experience a lot of games when I was in high school. I got to experience them when I was in college, but high school and things. But when I was actually a kid, I never really had those experiences. So now just the kid in me being fully brought out. Now that I work a ton of sporting events and I don't really get to be a fan. So yeah,
it's great to engage that fan mode. And what was, I think, really cool for the Mystics, I saw JP Flame tweeted from the Junkies this morning about how he tweeted this, we tweeted it last night. I saw it this morning, but he tweeted this out when they were down 20-7 at that point. And he brought his daughter last night. His daughter wore a Caitlin Clark shirt. And I saw his tweet of like, man, this stinks for the Mystics. Like, all these people are here and it sounds like an Indiana home game. But I saw him in the replies later say what was true, which is at the end of the game, like everyone was rooting for Washington. Like, it was a Mystics home game by the end. There were a ton of Caitlin fans in the building, but it's kind of that same thing that we've seen NBA arenas have for years when you got a fan of the home team who also has a favorite player who's on the other team. And they wind up kind of rooting for both teams. You root for LeBron and the Wizards, or you root for Steph Curry and in whatever arena he's in on that given night. And since Caitlin especially didn't play very much, barely, if at all, in the second half, like the whole arena was engaged because it was a close game, and you had all these people in 22 Fever shirts that were rooting for the Mystics, and it was a really great time. So what I'm hoping is if the Fever or if the Mystics and Monumental's ticket department is functional, which I'm sure it is, they do a good job over there. All those 20,000 people are getting emails today. Season tickets available for next year. Want to sign up? Did you have a good time? Hey now. And I hope that we get more games there next year. Obviously, if the very slim lottery odds pay off and Paige Beckers is here, you're going to have a lot of games at Capital One next year. But even so, I'm hoping that there's more, not just, Chicago, Indiana. I would love to see them play Vegas there, and New York potentially. Like there's so much star power in this league, and it's only going to grow. If LA has Paige and they got Paige and Cameron Brink and Rakia Jackson, like that would be a game that would probably sell a lot of tickets at Capital One Arena. So hopefully it's a place that we're doing a lot more shows from next year, and a place that we're going to more often. And cool to see in such a basketball town like DC, them sell out Capital One last night, get that 20,000 plus, set the record for the biggest crowd in WNBA history. And I also think I just saw a press release. I didn't get past the headline, but let me click on it real quick. I do believe Monumental also set a viewing record last night. So I think that there was a ratings record for the biggest. Yeah. Monumental Sports Network sets new WNBA single game viewership mark during Thursday Mystics game. Network registers highest regular season single game ratings in more than 8 seasons for yesterday's game against Indiana. So not only were there people in the building, people that were watching at home, and for considering the Mystics had an extremely outside chance of making the playoffs, the interest level in their chance, not to mention, hey, I get to watch Caitlin Clark on my local regional sports net. That's a cool thing to see. And if you want more on kind of the growth of the sport and also a playoff preview, did a special episode of the Hoffman W Sports WNBA show today. That's available in podcast feeds and on the internet, on YouTube at Hoffman W Sports. But when we get back here on the radio, we will dive back into the football. And that's where we will spend most of our Friday. Again, Clinton Yates at 4:30. Patrick Peterson at 5, around the NFL 5:30, Pick 6 at 6, Take Command at 6:30. And next, Whitt Jr. was asked how many players on his defense are actually playing the play style that he wants to see. And his answer's making some waves. We'll play it for you next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. You need more juice from me, Anthony? I'm not loud enough?
Yeah, for some reason, it's not coming across that loud.
On Comrex 1?
Yep.
Dang, what levels look all good over here? This is behind the scenes radio, but hey, it is what it is. We gotta make an adjustment. Hold on, I gotta disappear for a second because the volume knob's down there. It's out of reach.
All right.
3, 2, 1. Pew!
See you, Craig. All right, and this is the part of the show where Anthony Haney III faces his fears. All right, Craig is back.
It's not that far away. How's the volume now? Do we sound loud and clear?
Yes, a lot better.
Excellent. All right. Everyone adjust your headphones. By the way, this is a very, if you were listening at a very specific point of the show yesterday, this part is for you, and then we'll get to the Joe Whitt sound in like 60 seconds here. But Anthony, we talked yesterday during Never Read the Comments about whether or not we should exclude the whistle sound effects because apparently it's like scaring people and it's causing problems with dogs and all this kind of stuff. So when I posted the pick 6 yesterday, I edited it down. I did put a little mini fade on the whistle at the start, so it's less harsh. It's less like boom whistle, and it's more of like whistle. So don't say I never did anything for you. People complaining on the internet about volume levels. We're here to serve you, and we did. And it takes an extra small click, and I do think it will make a big difference without ruining the je ne sais quoi of the pick 6 open.
Look at you being a man for others, Craig.
That's how I roll.
We love to see that, man.
I'm just here to serve, here to be a dancing monkey for all of your entertainment. Okay, let's get to the Joe Whitt sound. So the Commanders have talked quite a lot. Dan Quinn, chiefly, have talked about we got to play our style and we want to impose our play style. You hear that term a lot. And then it's like, okay, well, what does play style mean? Play style is we're going to play fast. We're going to play physical. And I think last week, more so than in week 1 against Tampa, you start to see some examples of that. You start to see some guys that are really thumping as tacklers, as hitters, the way they take on blocks, the way they obviously bring down ball carriers, make contact with ball carriers, just a general speed and quickness and a tenacity with how they play that says like, oh, that's different. That is different not only than what's been here in the past, but then what is on the field and other players right now. You can see who's in and who's out, if you will. And today, Joe Whitt Jr. was asked specifically, hey, who on the team is actually playing up to that level?
Frankie Louvu, it starts with him. The way he runs and hits. This last game, I we won it and it was good. But Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Ben, and Quan. I think Quan played really good the first game, even though we didn't play good as a defense. Those 4 men have been playing the play style. Okay, all right. Frankie Louvu runs and hits and puts his body on people in a very violent manner, and we have to get everybody to do that. All right. Quan, the Tampa game, we did not play a good game defensively, but he came out of the post and had some really nice tackles, and some space tackles that were hard. So did Percy. They had some space tackles that were hard. Now, we have to get 11 guys doing it every time. And then we talked about playing with a deep crew. When those guys get tired, all right, the next group that come in have to be able to do it. And so, but if you're asking, of plays, Frankie, his whole play style is what we're looking for as a defense from a physicality, run and hit. And I thought Bobby Wagner, I challenged him on some things this past week in the coverage aspect, and he was all over it, man. He played really well this last game. Those 2 men played really well.
That makes me feel good as an analyst because when I watch the tape, those are the 2 that stand out. Those are the 2 that if you watch and you watch with that specificity, because like we talk about watching tape and like anybody can watch tape, but you got to watch tape with intention. You have to say like, okay, on this round through the tape, I am watching coverage structures. I am watching how the linebackers play in terms of physicality. I'm just going to focus on the linebackers because if you try to see everything, it's impossible. I mean, even on the same play, like there's a reason that the coach's clicker does like the little rewind thing, and thank God NFL Pro now has the ability to do kind of a version of that where you can quickly just rewind 1 second, rewind 1 second, rewind 1 second. So I can watch, okay, let me watch the X, let me watch the outside receiver, the slot receiver, the tight end. How do they release? Okay, what coverage is the defense getting into? Like if you really want to break down some of the plays, like you have to have an intentionality when you watch film. But if you were to just Forget all that. I'm not watching for coverage structures, or I'm not watching to see how they rush together. I just want to sit back and watch this play. And let's see who hits somebody really hard. Let's see where my eyes go. Your eyes would go to Frankie Louvu. He's the number one guy. You'd be like, oh, I just saw someone get hit really hard. Oh, Louvu was the one who hit him. That's going to happen a lot. Bobby Wagner, you're going to watch him play with physicality. I mean, especially with Wagner, like, you just watch the ball, right? Handoff, where's the ball going? Bobby Wagner's going to arrive there, and he's going to arrive with some intention. And he's going to ride with physicality. And those little hits, like, they really add up over the course of a game. You're just tired of getting hit by that guy. It slows down your decision-making. It slows down what you're able to do as an offense, because dudes are like, where is 54 about to come from and thump me? And that's great. That's what you want. You want to be miserable to play against. And you see Quan Martin flying out of the post. And I'm glad he mentioned Benjamin St. Juste, because Juice, not only does he arrive and tackle well and with physicality, but, you know, the tenacity piece. I talked about this earlier in the week on the play where he forces the fumble. Like, there's a really good block on that play by Malik Neighbors. He has a good angle. He blocks BSJ. The play gets outside, and Benjamin never gives up on the play. He works his way back into it, and he forces the fumble. And so, yes, that was a big gain, and there's a lot of, I think, things to coach up on that play. But for Benjamin to just, hey, stick with it, play with tenacity, arrive with a purpose, whether it's to deliver a big hit, whether it's to punch the ball out, both, like, figure out a way to make a difference. Benjamin St. Juste did a lot of that. And I think you got to give credit to Juice for doing that so far through 2 games without picking up a bunch of, you know, PI penalties and hands to the face and all the things that he struggled with over the last couple of years in the flag department. What I think caught a lot of people's ears, though, is not necessarily who got mentioned, but it's who didn't. And it's not just that any specific D lineman didn't get mentioned. It's that none of them did. And that includes not just Allen and Payne, but like Dorrance Armstrong, who has played for Dan and Joe in the past. Like, Dante Fowler has been with Dan for a long time. And I do think Fowler plays with a bit more urgency. Like, I watch Fowler and I go, I get why Dan Quinn likes this guy. So I think, you know, for some of them, it might be more of Joe was thinking of other guys. You know, he's not tacking through everybody. But I do think that if the D line was setting the example, he would mention them first. Because if I say, like, hey, violence, physicality, you know, speed, effort, who's playing with that? And the D line was like busting their butts every single play and setting the tone, then Joe Whitt wouldn't default to Frankie Louvu, because those other guys would be the ones setting the tone. And instead, it's the other way around. And so it's easy to be forgotten when you're not doing it at as high of a level. And so it's not necessarily like he called out anybody specifically for not doing it. The fact that none of the defensive linemen jumped to mind immediately, and all these back 7 players do, and not all of them, but all the ones that he mentioned do, that in itself says enough. And if you want to talk about why this defense has struggled to the extent that it struggled so far, it's exactly that. And so what I think is funny is sometimes it's like, oh, I don't care about they play physicality. I need them to make plays. And it's like, you realize one leads to the other, right? You realize that part of the play style is to not just to have an attitude that sounds real good in a press conference, is because if you play more physically, especially within the line of scrimmage, and you win some of those hand-to-hand combats, then maybe Jeremy Chinn's not stuck making a tackle in a gigantic gap, because you fought back against a double team more physically, more violently, that shrinks down the gap. Jeremy Chinn's got an easier job. He can make the tackle instead of missing it. Maybe you get to the quarterback a little bit sooner and he doesn't have a chance to escape, and you finish some of the plays that have been almost, because you got that little bit of extra oomph to your rush. These are the kinds of things these little things that stack up and ultimately get the results. And so I do think it's a fairly big deal that Joe Whitt said this, but I will also caveat it by saying we are 2 games into the season. These guys have never played together. There's a confidence that allows you to play faster and thus more physically and violently that they clearly don't have in this system and off of each other yet. And things as they are don't mean that's how they always will be. And my sincere hope is, starting Monday night against Cincinnati, that the D-line joins the party because they need them to. And if this defense is going to have any chance of being a top half in the league this year, that's the group that's got to lead the way. And the linebackers supplementing it, not the linebackers dragging everybody else like it kind of has been through 2 games. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, Clinton Yates joins us, and he's got something to tell me about a colleague from around the horn that's going to this game on Monday night, and it's really important, and he thinks there's a whole discussion off of it. We'll see what Yates means with all of that next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And we welcome back for his last Friday visit for a while because he's going to start joining us on Wednesdays during football season. But it's Monday Night Football this week. So what's a day, Clinton Yates? What's a day?
Speaking of Monday Night Football, I was told one thing by a colleague that I thought you should know. We're doing television around the horn, and, before the show, you sit around and you talk with your various cohorts on the air.
I've heard that's called Before the Horn.
Before the Horn, correct. BTH,
there you
as
go.
It's known. So Kevin Blackistone, the professor, D.C. area native, Good Counsel High graduate, professor at Maryland. We all know his work. He says to me, Yates, I got something I want you to know. I was like, what's that, KB? He says, I am going for the first time in a decade, non-media, to see the Commanders play a football game. This man is going in Gen Pop to whatever that field is named now.
Northwest Stadium.
Sure. Southwest Stadium, call it whatever you want. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, look, that bank paid a lot of money. That credit union paid a lot of money for that. Don't you
I'm
disparage.
sure that you can get your daily, I'm sure you can get your direct deposit a day early with them or whatever. My point is, KB is going just as a regular fan to this game. And I understand that this sounds ridiculous. And if you are of the type that really values your experience at NFL games, please do not jump on me as being some type of a bougie person. But you have to understand.
No, jump on me, because that's absolutely what I am.
Then you have to understand that once you get accustomed to a certain amount of access at games, it legitimately becomes less fun to just sit in the crowd and go, because it's a completely different thing and you're there for entirely different reasons. Never mind if you've already been jaded as a fan. Craig, my jaw dropped. I was like, why are you going? Is somebody from Maryland in the game? Is there a Good Counsel or even WCAC grad playing on the field? He's like, nope, just plain interested. I was shocked, Gregory. Shocked.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
If you had told me an Around the Horn panelist was going, I would have picked like probably 3 or 4 people not from DC before I picked Blackistone to go to Northwest Stadium as a fan on Monday night. But I feel like that's happening for sure more and more. Like, I mean, well, I guess the game Monday is in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So that's probably worth pointing out before anybody goes searching for tickets.
Yes.
It's like, wait, I thought the game was, I want to go. No, it's not Monday, or not Monday at home. But I do wonder how, like, the Giants was such an interesting home opener because you always have the fans come down from New York and Philly. It's close. It's just very easy to get to. But I do wonder this year, especially if they can at least ride around 500, what the fan base looks like, and how Jaden plays is going to be a huge thing. I don't have to tell you that the last time there were great home crowds on a regular basis, there was a quarterback that was the future of the franchise, number 2 pick that was drawing a lot of that attention.
Yeah, my friend
But
Bob.
I do think that with some of the upgrades they made to the stadium, the general effort, like, I do think fans care about that. Like, the fans that would spend money to go to a game, like, care, like, hey, this owner seems to be trying for us. And that alone, the attitude going in will help your fan experience versus like almost going out of spite. It is something that definitely have a pin in it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And I think about this a lot because, look, we're arguing with senators in Montana over what's going to happen at RFK, which is a whole other matter. And I think that Harris is actually in a really tough position here in terms of managing that group of people like a KB, the people who are like, I'm still willing, I'm still able. It would not be a bad thing for me to go to a game, but there's just been so much ridiculousness over time, never mind the state of the stadium, that I don't want to do it. And here's another thing that I want to mention while we're on this topic, because my dad, of all people, sent me an email about this, referring to that Montana situation. But I thought to myself, I said, I remember what RFK was like, but also I was a child, like genuinely was a person of a young, impressionable mind. And I remember what it was like at what was then known as Raljon, because we had season tickets, and how that changed as an adult. I don't think that you can simply by sight exactness, as in the literal place where the previous stadium was, you're not trying to match the old thing. That's just not what it's going to be like, because that's just not possible. And I'm very interested to see how this plays out in terms of what the holdover fan experience is from whatever they thought they were taking from RFK to Northwest Credit Union funding bank situation, financial institution field.
You got to get the word federal in there, because the nickname that we have chosen around these parts is the Fed.
Okay, sure. Love it. The Fed, the FEC, whatever you want to call it. Whatever experience they're taking from one to another to what's going to be the next, to me is almost far more interesting than what the football team does, because that's a toss-up pretty much every year in terms of talent.
Sure. That's a great point too, in terms of like, there is an expectation of like, oh, we'll be back in the spiritual home. Will that mean something to some people? Yes. And like, in some ways, the experience in the parking lot will be far more similar to what you remember than in the stadium, because
Correct.
they're going to build a world-class stadium, because that's how this ownership group, that's how they roll. Is it's not going to be like the beauty of RFK, but especially by the end, was like, it's a dump, but it's our dump. The stadium shakes. The stadium ain't going to shake. Like, the stadium is going to be built on solid ground.
And it won't be a baseball field either, which is what RFK is, sidebar. It's a ballpark, in case we forgot that part of everything.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. You know my point. That place was built for baseball,
I know your
quite
point.
literally,
No, I 100% get your point. But there is, like, I had this comment the other day on we had Sam Fortier on to talk about his reporting on this, and someone was like, oh, I can't wait for people to remember how long it takes to get there. And I'm like, compared to Landover? What are you talking about? You mean the one with the metro stop right there? And there's just like a reality to, there is this, like, the spiritual side of the RFK thing. But there's also logistics side. And that's always been my point, is like, from a logistical standpoint, yeah, they're going to have to do some construction. They're going to have to widen some roads. They're going to have to probably redo some of the metro stuff out there. They're going to have to really be on their P's and Q's from like the urban planner standpoint, in a way that Washington, D.C. always isn't.
Yeah.
But it's certainly better logistically than, hey, this is in the middle of a neighborhood in Landover. Because as someone who sat in an hour of traffic, to get into the stadium this weekend, like, that sucked. Like, I was literally driving past an apartment complex. Like, this road ain't built for 80,000 people to get in and out. What are we doing? RFK, I think, can be, I don't know if it's retrofitted or refitted to do that in a way. Plus, the public transit is a complete game changer. It's the only way to make any stadium anywhere in the world accessible to mass amounts of people without it being a god-awful experience. And it's just a requirement.
Well, we're since we're into the urban planning discussion, I don't necessarily know that I agree that the situation automatically gets better. Everything you retrofit, between dealing with the district on Sundays for 10, 12 max times a year, I don't know that that's worth it for the so-called spiritual home. I don't, and it's also a situation where I feel like you also don't want to get that wrong. Like, if it turns out that you get to RFK and people are like, this actually sucks. You know what I mean? Like, that's entirely in play if it just becomes too difficult to build something there that actually is in cohesion with the rest of the neighborhood, because that's in a neighborhood too. People forget that part about RFK because they were, they're blinded by the glory years of the past. And so it's a really difficult thing, but the logistics are one thing. The sort of vibe is another. And as you know, I've got plenty of friends who still go to games, who are season ticket holders as well. And they're going for the people that are there. You know what I'm saying? They're not necessarily that pressed about the football. So I was happy to see them get a win in the simple context of the fans were rewarded. But, I still think that this challenge is so much more difficult than just go back to RFK. Everything will be fine as far as fan experience is concerned. It's much harder than that.
Clinton Yates, ESPN, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So, if you're, I don't know what your schedule, you haven't sent the email yet for next week, because you don't send your friends and family.
Right.
Here's what I'm on TV.
The curtain, okay? The emails have been a little off recently.
It's a great idea. It's something that I should do, but I just hope that everybody. The amount of times I have like aunts and whoever, they're like, "What time's your show again?" I'm like, "The one I've been doing at the same time for how many years now?" The point is, Clinton.
Yes.
Tuesday, if you're on Around the Horn, and Jaden Daniels plays well, and the Commanders upset the Bengals, what's the conversation? And then perhaps if we had to pick likeliness, this might be a little bit more likely, if we're being honest. If he struggles on Monday night, what's the conversation like on Around the Horn Tuesday?
So there's two things happening here. Number one is the opponent. The Bengals are a team of favor, I would say, when it comes to what the national lens is. People want the Bengals to be good. People like Joe Burrow. People think Jamar Chase is an exciting player because he is. I don't think the Commanders are anywhere close to that. So an upset, I think, will be looked at as what's going on with the Bengals. Do they have a real problem? To be fair. Now, that said, the second part about this is that that's the advantage of being off the national radar, is that you don't have the Stephen A's and Shannon Sharps yelling about you every week to the point that they could potentially change your own personal narrative inside of your building. That is, in fact, an advantage, in my opinion, for the Commanders. Let the kid develop. I said this on television yesterday. I've been saying this for daggone near a decade. Quarterback, worst coach position in the league. Do not pull a Carolina Panthers, y'all, and have some goofy out of the locker room conversation all the time just because you happen to lose a couple games. The Bob situation was unique. There was a power structure, there was a power balance failure between head coach, GM, and owner that was usurped over all of the football, and it screwed everything up. Thank goodness that they're not in that situation now, and I hope that expectations can be managed. Sure, does a win against the Bengals on Monday Night Football solidify you a little bit in terms of the fact that you probably belong in the NFL? Absolutely. But don't get too fired up about this. This is a long process. So because the Bengals are so much far ahead of the Commanders in terms of what their believed paths to success are, I think win or lose, the story is the Bengals and Joe Burrow.
That is probably correct. That now thinking about the graphics on the bottom of Around the Horn as I watch on mute because we're on at 5 o'clock, and it's definitely going to be Bengals first. Then reality be like, by the way, the Commanders, and then you get to your Jaden Daniels topic because it's a rookie quarterback, and when it comes to rookie quarterbacks, we can't help ourselves.
Exactly.
Clinton Yates, you can watch him on Around the Horn. You can listen to him on ESPN Daily, and that comes out
daily. Turns out.
Clinton Yates, everybody. He'll be back on Wednesday here on the Hoffman Show.
Thank you, Gregory. You're doing a lot of shows today. Run along.
All right, coming up at 5 o'clock, we are going to actually let you hear some of Take Command. We were supposed to have Patrick Peterson. He had something come up. Oh, everything's okay. For all I know, he got a flat tire and everything's fine. Hope it's nothing serious. But he unfortunately is not going to be able to join us today. So we will instead, since we can't give you Patrick Peterson, we'll give you Logan Paulson. Which I think the person on planet Earth, Anthony, that would laugh hardest at that statement is probably Logan Paulson.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it a shot. That was a very good.
No, I think a lot of fans probably be like, honestly, I'd rather hear from Logan. Well, I don't know what Patrick Peterson's media stat. I know as a player.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have Patrick Peterson. You know what else I'd rather have Patrick Peterson? Logan Paulson would have rather had Patrick Peterson than himself. But that's okay. Everyone's got their things. And Pat might be awesome. We just hired him as our new Odyssey Sports Insider. I think our bosses' are probably pretty smart people. They hired the people that hired us, Anthony. I mean, how dumb can they be?
Pretty smart.
I think that's pretty smart. So I'm excited to have Pat on. We'll definitely have him on this season. I wanted to talk to him about the cornerback stuff, obviously, but we will get to some other stuff that Logan and I talked about, specifically how can you unlock the deep ball in the Commanders' offense. That's what we're going to let you hear coming up at 5 o'clock with Patrick having to reschedule with us, hopefully for next week. Honestly, to be fully transparent with all of you in the audience, we're hoping that we can get him on Monday. Also on Monday, I think we're going to have a member of the Monday Night crew as we prepare for Monday Night Football. So Monday's going to be a weird show, Anthony. Like this whole week's been weird because all the stuff that we do is off by a day. And Monday's going to be weird because Monday's typically our huge review day, and we'll be previewing the game that people care about the most.
Yeah.
So, like, what should we do on Monday? Like, how much at 5:30 on Monday, or like 3 hours to kickoff? Are we going to do our Around the NFL? I think we probably will. People still care about all the other games that happen. Everyone's going to have watched them because they won't have spent their Sunday watching the Commanders.
Yeah. Or do we move it to? I don't know.
I think we probably keep it. And then Tuesday becomes kind of Monday. But like, should I do a 1st and 10 on the rest of the games of the weekend? We could do that. There's possibilities, Anthony.
Yeah. You got the storylines. We got some fascinating storylines for.
I mean, we'll still do our pick six like it was a Friday. So we'll do our pick six players that we are looking forward to watching. It'll just be like, hey, here's the players we're planning on watching in 2.5 hours versus players we plan on watching on Sunday.
Yeah.
So we'll, hey, what do we say? Those bosses that hired Patrick Peterson, they're smart because they hired us. We got to prove that they're smart. We got to do our jobs.
You're right.
Got to do well. You doing anything this weekend?
Am I? Yeah, I'm doing a lot this weekend. So tonight after I leave here, I'm gonna go watch Georgetown Prep football. I haven't been able to make it to any of their games, so I gotta go see my guys. They play.
Are they good?
They are 3-1 to start.
We're already 4 weeks into the high school season.
2-1.
Gross.
2-1.
Okay, that makes
they
me
had a
feel
bye
better.
week already. Yeah, they're 2-1.
So we are 4 weeks in. Gracious.
Yeah. But we got some talent. We got some D1 talent. We have a freshman who just got an offer from Syracuse.
Well, clearly he should accept it and not accept any more offers.
Yeah, he got 2 right now, Virginia Tech and Syracuse.
Get out of here, Hokies.
And then, so I'm going to go watch those guys. I'm going to wash my clothes because this weekend I'm going to be gone. Tomorrow morning, I'll be driving down to Virginia.
The way you said that was so funny. Not like, I got to do some laundry. It's like, I'm going to wash my clothes. Like it's something you don't do often enough.
Oh, no. I watch it pretty much every week, to be honest. I try to
you do
anyway.
laundry. It's funny, though, because like when you're a single human, your laundry rotation is just not that tight because it doesn't have to be. Like,
Nope.
in part, it doesn't fill up the machine. So you kind of got to have a little bit of patience.
Exactly.
But when you're a couple, nevertheless a family, like that laundry, that rotation, a lot quicker.
Yeah, I'm already knowing. My dad is down. He spends his entire Sunday in the basement just because he used to just wash clothes and fold them at the same time. So yeah, tomorrow morning I'll be driving down to Richmond for a HBCU Go TV game. Virginia State is playing Winston-Salem State. And then after that game, I will be flying to Indianapolis because on Sunday I will be watching the Colts.
You are doing a high school, college, NFL football. That's impressive.
48 hours, baby.
And then you're back Are you flying from Richmond straight to Indy?
Yeah, so I got a rental. I'll be taking down to Richmond, then I'll be flying out of Richmond. And ironically enough, my layover is at Dulles. So I'm just
I was going to say, I don't think, because I booked flights from Richmond to Indy for Gores in the past, my training podcast business partner. Because when we book that stuff, I book it on our Train with the Best business stuff. And so I happen to know there's not any directs. And so we've had that same bit where it's like, do you want to just drive to DC and fly with me? Like, no, I'll take the connection.
Yeah, I didn't want to have to drive again. And I might hit traffic driving back. So I was just like, I'll just fly to Richmond.
I will say you're doing the least fun. There's a more fun connection available for you, Anthony.
Which is?
Chicago. Here's why Chicago is a more fun connection. You time travel. Chicago and Indianapolis are about a 20-minute flight.
And they're
30-minute flight. And they're an hour apart.
Yep.
So you can land and then take off. Let's say your connection takes off from Chicago at 11 a.m. Central Time. You will land. I guess it's better the other way around. I guess you kind of, if you were flying back through Chicago, that's what it is. So if you were to leave Indy at 11 a.m. Eastern, you could land in Chicago at like 10:30. It's a wacky bit, right on the edge of the time zone. But I guess going there is not as good.
Yeah,
it's just gonna be annoying because you're gonna be like, oh cool, I'm at Dulles.
Yeah, and I'll be
a statement no one has ever said. Oh cool, I'm at Dulles. All due respect.
Yeah. So yeah, I got that. I get into Indy. I want to say 11. My line brother's gonna pick me up. Go to the game on Sunday. Colts need to get a win. They have to get a win. 0-2. Oh man,
yeah, they need it.
You cannot go 0-3 and expect to make the playoffs.
No.
Playoffs.
The stats for 0-2 are terrible.
Stats for 0-3. There's only been one team to come back and make the playoffs.
Really?
So the Bengals are 0-2. The Ravens are 0-2. The Colts are 0-2. There are a whole bunch of 0-2 teams in the AFC, and we already know how challenging the AFC is. So,
well, maybe not if they're all 0-3. Maybe it's a year to make some history. Doing it all together.
Yeah.
But
I think the Texans was the team to do it. 2018 Texans, where they ended up 11-5. Yeah.
Stats and information, Anthony over here.
Hey, look. I be on Twitter. I be browsing.
Oh, you saw it on Twitter? How do you know that's even true? Who tweeted it?
I couldn't tell you. I can't credit it, to be honest.
All right. Well, then we probably want to double check that. Okay. All right. I'm doing nothing this weekend. I need to do nothing this weekend. I'm a dead man walking right now.
You're tired?
I want to rest. I'm excited. Spirit play tonight. I will sit on my couch and watch that. I will try not to fall asleep. I don't care what the Super Bowl could be on tonight, and I would be trying not to fall asleep watching it. Tomorrow, there's nothing on the schedule. Sunday, there is sit on your butt and watch Red Zone on the schedule.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's the opposite of what you're doing. You are doing the most. I am doing the least. And if you average us out, we are doing the right amount this weekend. When we get back, take command. Can the Commanders unlock the deep ball in the Jaden Daniels-led offense? And if so, how would they do it? We discuss amongst myself and Logan Paulson. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live, if you like, on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Coming up at 5:30, we will have a look around the NFL. But right now, let's dial it in on the Commanders for today's Not My Beat.
Story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in, Not My Beat.
So one of the big questions that we have about this offense is, can they get the deep ball going? We know Jaden Daniels can throw it. We know that they would like to get it. We saw it in training camp. But so far, not so good. 0 completions this year, over 20 yards in the air. So how do you unlock it? It's one of the questions that we brought to take command this week, and I made Logan Paulson try to answer it. Here's how that went. And, of course, for the full episode, search Take Command wherever you get your podcasts. But, Logan, that doesn't sell podcasts. We don't sell podcasts. But that doesn't sell podcasts. Let's give the people what they want. How do they throw it deep, Logan? That's kind of the question, but let's talk about how they were to unlock this defense or unlock this offense in terms of the deep passing game. We know that Jaden Daniels as a deep ball thrower is excellent. It's something that he specialized in college. Everyone, even if you like Jaden Daniels in the draft, if you didn't like Jaden Daniels in the draft, you pretty much agreed he's the best deep ball thrower in this draft. We saw it in the preseason. We saw it in training camp. They haven't hit any of those through 2 games in the regular season. And last week, not only did they not hit any, they didn't attempt any. It's hard to win games in the long term in the NFL if you don't generate explosive plays. More explosive plays come in the pass game. So, given all the challenges of this Cincinnati defense, given that we just talked about all the reasons why we'd probably steer mostly away from this and just try to, bleed them with 1,000 paper cuts, and maybe some of those cuts are more significant than others. If Cincinnati struggles to run, you can generate or struggles against the run. What needs to happen based off what's being called right now, or what are some areas where they can perhaps shift some of the calls to try to generate some explosive plays in the passing game?
Yeah, so I think when we say we want them to run the ball, we want them to kind of adopt a similar game plan the last week. That's in the understanding that they do take shots. They have called shot plays. They just haven't hit them yet. And again, last week it was because the Giants did a really good job covering. I think they called what I would say maybe three or four kind of deep down the field shot plays that were covered well. And then in the week one game against Tampa Bay, they missed a couple, right? Jade missed a read. They missed the throw to Terry. There was another opportunity on the field. They didn't quite get there in terms of him seeing the spacing of the coverage. So I do think they've been calling them. It's just, 1 week they're covered and 1 week we didn't quite get them executed effectively. So I would say I appreciate what Cliff has done in that regard because he's been very selective. And that was one thing I appreciated about watching his film from Arizona. And I've said this before, is he was very selective about finding those shots. And so versus a defense like this Lou Anarumo, they want to defend the pass. They're very good at it. They're very well disciplined in the back end. They've got a lot of experienced players, guys that understand the defense at a high level. So if I'm Cliff, I'm going to, again, kind of adopt this, Kyle Shanahan philosophy. It's if you want to play 2 shell, we're going to run you out of it. And the second you're out of it, that's when we're going to take our shot. That's when we're going to take a play action shot. That's when we're going to run our fake screen takeoff. That's when we're going to run our, 4-man overload and isolate Terry on the backside or whatever that looks like, however we get to that for this particular week. But we need to dictate to you in a certain way. And I think that might happen sooner rather than later because I think Lou Anarumo is going to come out in a single high shell. So maybe you come out, you take a shot early, in the first drive, kind of again to see if you can get them back in a favorable coverage structure. But to me, that's how you would do it, and I think that's how Cliff has done it so far. And I think I think fans want more explosive plays down the field, and I understand why. That's exciting, that's fun, that's engaging.
Also prevents you from having to score in the red zone if you can actually hit it for a touchdown. Which
100%.
Is relevant.
But I think I think it's important to remain selective with it, to remain selective with those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the one thing that's also impressed me about Jaden so far is his patience, right? He knows he's a good deep ball thrower. And sometimes we see quarterbacks who love the deep ball that fall in love with the deep ball. That or who are good at the deep ball fall in love with it. It's like, I got to look for the big play. I got to look for the big play. Jaden is actually probably processing still a little too quickly and maybe not sitting on some things that could be bigger plays down the field. He's like, let me get the ball out of my hands. That's what they want. And, he kind of has been a living embodiment of the old Alex Smith. You can't go broke making a profit. And sometimes that profit's with his legs. Sometimes it's the quick passing game, but he's doing a really good job of continually pushing the team forward, even if it's incrementally and not just waiting for the big one. One other thing that Anaromo might do, though, that I think takes a player, like potentially opens up the opportunities for big plays in the passing game because it takes a player on some level out of the coverage structure, is their teams are going to start spying the hell out of Jaden. They're going to eventually go, we can't have this guy scramble everywhere. Now, I don't know that there's a spy that's really well suited necessarily to spy Jaden because he's so fast that you can watch him all you want. Catching him is a whole other deal. But if there is a lot of spying of Jaden in the passing game, what opportunities does that potentially open, whether it's a different area in the middle of the field, certain gaps that'll be a little bit bigger in zone coverage? It maybe dictates, hey, if you have a spy here, you have to play man or certain types of zones behind it. Like what does the spy do to a defense, and what opportunities does that create for an offense? Because I would guess that we're going to see that and certainly in like third and long situations, if not a lot more as the season goes on in all kinds of situations.
Yeah, so I think there's a really good example of that in the New York Giants game. So they didn't do a ton of spying, but they did enough. They'd probably, I'd say 10, probably 7 snaps maybe. And so what happened was, it's the play that Austin Eckler catches that little middle screen underneath. Mm-hmm. And, it ends up being a first down. And so if you look at the safety to the offensive left, he's like rotating down into the box. And usually that's like your plug player, or like your hole player, some people call it. Like, think about your Madden, right? You got your post safety who's kind of playing the whole field. You've got your man players on the outside, and your plug players kind of helping everybody coming internally, right? And so he's spying, so his eyes are fixated on Jaden. And he's not aware of the screen. He's not aware of the back. So he kind of works himself up pretty close to the offensive line. He's not looking at the running back the way a normal plug player would. And as a result, when the ball comes out, Austin catches it, and he's like surprised that the offensive lineman is up on him already, blocking him for the screen. And so he can't make a play on the screen. And so I'd say that's at its simplest level. It just changes the focus of that kind of whole plug player, and he's no longer a plug player. So it stresses everybody in man coverage a little bit more. It stresses that player more because they're of two minds now. They're a coverage player, but they're also spying the quarterback. And so you become a little bit faulty. And I think that's a great example on that Austin Eckler catch of how that happens. And then as a result, like, you have to build, if you're going to spy all the time, you have to build your coverage structures around spying, you know what I mean? Around this limitation, around, not having everybody locked in on their assignment 100%. And that becomes really, really challenging, because you can't, when you start bastardizing rules of coverage to start spying people, it's a little bit like a house of cards. Like, you pull that one card out and it makes everything a little bit weaker and a little bit less effective. So I think that's an interesting kind of thought experiment, is if they start spying a lot. I don't think they will. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll try to handle it with their rush plan, because, again, it does I think they'll throw in it a little bit, obviously, in certain situations, but I think it weakens you so much that it's not always worth it. And I think they do have personnel like Logan Wilson, man. I think he's instinctive enough. Like, I think that's one thing about spies, is everyone's like, oh, you got to have, like the best athlete on the field to match your best athlete at quarterback. And to me, there's more of an instinctive element to it. There's more like understanding that it's the time and the down, like when the quarterback likes to run, the angle I need to take to cut him off. And when they have a guy like Logan Wilson, I think they could definitely get that done. Also, Von Bell has had some success with that in his career, playing safety. And they like, much like the Commanders, to be in like their nickel and dime packages a lot to keep more speed on the field. So I definitely think those are some matchups that are interesting. And again, they'll probably do it a little bit. But if I'm Lou Anarumo, I'm saying, their pass game doesn't really, that's the priority in terms of defending. And we can live with a couple stolen first downs as long as our offense scores a lot of points.
So let's get to the Bengals offense then and talk about Joe Burrow. one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And Logan, watching them on tape, boy, do they know it. They call a game in a way that says, we've got Joe Burrow, and he can bail us out of some stuff. And what's really interesting when you watch them, you think, oh, wow, this could be a really high-powered, explosive offense. And obviously, we've seen Burrow hit Chase for big plays throughout the years and T. Higgins for big plays throughout the years. They can be explosive for sure. But they are actually a pretty conservative play calling team that just knows how to stay in good down and distance. They understand the power of being in 2nd and 5 and 3rd and 3. And they know if we run the ball on 1st down and it gets stopped, we can run a spacing concept on 2nd down and Joe Burrow is going to hit the right guy and get 5 yards and we're back on schedule. And the reliance on him to be able to just consistently make good decisions in the quick game and the fact that they feel like they can literally get 5 yards whenever they want, I think impacts the way they call the entire game. How does that ultimately play out when you watch the game unfold from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's like I don't want to say they're a bad offense, but they're not a particularly well-designed offense at the moment, right? It feels like there's certain offenses you watch, like Tampa Bay, you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. Detroit, Kansas City, name your like high-powered offense. But they seem to really be leaning on Joe Burrow. There's not a lot of motion in the offense. There's not a ton of formation variation. There's not a ton of super tight splits. Like there's just it's like we have Joe Burrow and we're going to execute at a high level. We know he's going to execute at a high level and he's going to maximize our play call. And so I think that's one of the reasons when you watch the New England game, they don't look particularly effective because he was not particularly effective. And then you watch Kansas City and you're like, oh, Joe Burrow's dealing, like the offense looks pretty good. And they're asking him to make a ton of like very high leverage throws all the time. So what I would say is that like when you get a simple coverage structure like that or simple offensive presentation, it allows you to do stuff that maybe you wouldn't do otherwise. So for example, they ran like a lot of like, I don't know, like double team, I want to say, because it's not a true bracket on, Jamar Chase. And so Jamar Chase is getting really frustrated. But like if you watch the Kansas City game, they're bracketing Jamar Chase on a 3rd and 9, I want to say. And then Joe Burrow delivers an absolute laser beam to Mike Gesicki, the tight end, over the middle of the field. And he ends up making an explosive play. I think it was a 50-yard gain. But like the window that he had to throw that ball into, I mean, it couldn't have been any smaller. But that's what he is able to do. I'll also say that their offensive line, they've invested quite a lot in the offensive line. Orlando Brown at left tackle, Trent Brown at right tackle. They are not, through the first 2 games, they're not playing exceptionally well. And so I do think he's been under a little bit more pressure than they would like. So I do think there are chinks in the armor for this offense when you watch them on film. Like they're a little bit simple. The offensive line's just playing okay. They can't run the ball very well, like because, Orlando Brown and Trent Brown are kind of have the reputation of being very good pass protectors. And Trent Brown, having played with him, he's one of the most players in their life, but he goes through phases where he's a little apathetic. He gets a little overweight. He's not really, grinding the way he needs to grind. And you see that on film. So like when he's got to cut off the backside 3 technique, he doesn't always do it. And that 3 technique ends up making a tackle for a loss. So because they're not running the ball well, it's all on Joe Burrow. I would almost, if I'm Joe Whitt Jr., be like, hey man, like we're just going to play cover 4 or cover 2, Tampa 2, soft, backed off coverage shells. You are going to run the ball. You're going to run it because we want the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands and force them to do something that they're not very effective at this moment. And I'm not saying that they're not going to be able to run the ball for 100 yards, but I would prefer 100 yards rushing than Joe Burrow throwing the ball 40 times a game because he's the reason the offense ticks in my estimation.
Again, if you want the rest of our Bengals Commanders preview, check out the Take Command podcast wherever you get yours. So, Anthony, we started that segment talking about how the Commanders can unlock the deep ball. And I have a question for you. Do you think, as fans are losing their mind about this, and frankly, like other outside media are, it's not just fans and local media, it's a real question. This is not some made up thing, right? This has been a thing for years with Terry McLaurin. Like, how can you get him the football more? For Jaden, predictably, people want to see the deep ball because he was so good at it in college. And I saw a clip from Mina Kimes' podcast where Ben Solak and Mina are like, how could you possibly not have figured out how to get some balls down the field yet? And I'm like, I get the question. My question for you is, in 2 weeks, so by the time the Commanders wrap up against Arizona, is this still a huge story?
I think the deep shots won't be that big of a story, but I think getting Terry targets may still actually be a story. I think last week, in the second half of that game, we seen, Jaden Daniels push the ball down the field a little bit more than he originally did in the first two games. And a lot of people have just paid attention to the fact that we're doing a lot of quick game stuff, just getting the ball out of his hands. But the second half, we seen him hold on to the ball a little bit more and being able to, deliver down the field. So I think that's going to come. I think Cliff is slowly but steadily, opening up the playbook. But I think when it comes to getting Terry's targets, he's getting treated like a number one. Like, he's getting help over the top. A lot of people, the defensive coordinators, are making it tough. And Ben Stanek actually asked Cliff Kingsbury about, getting Terry targets. I think if they did some jet sweeps, some other things of that nature, to just get the ball in his hands, I think that would be that would please people. But in terms of getting the ball down the field, we're just seeing it. I don't think there are that many opportunities. And when there are opportunities, we got to capitalize on them. And we just haven't capitalized on them just yet.
If I had to guess which one would be a story 2 weeks from now, I think I agree with you that Terry's targets will be more of a story than Jaden not throwing the ball down the field. I think they will find ways to get the ball in their playmakers' hands, or not in their playmakers' hands, but down the field, take their shots, whether it's Diami, Noah, Luke, Terry. Like, they're going to, I would expect 2 to 3 attempts in the next
Zach
2 games each.
Too.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you're going to do vertically.
I'm talking about in the intermediate more time.
Zach will get some the balls that he's getting, but like, how do you get these deep outside shots?
Yeah.
Because the thing that I think is worth pointing out is that criticism is coming from something substantive. It's not some silly narrative. It's not whatever. Like, the reason, some of the criticism of, like, the reason I think the coaches are reacting to these questions in a way that I would consider it, like, that they're engaging with them. That's how I'll phrase it, right? They're not like, oh, you're wrong. Because how have we heard that? Like, is this guy not playing hard enough? Or like, who's playing the play style? And Joe would be like, everybody is. And it's like, clearly not. These coaches live in reality. And so Joe Witt's like, yeah, we're not playing well enough. He's asked a question about John Allen and Daron Payne today, and he's like, yeah, those dudes are playing like everybody else on our defense, not as well as they want to be. It's a way to be honest without being harsh or putting blame on anybody. And Joe would probably say, like, yeah, I got to coach better. I gotta be more responsive to what's going on the field, or whatever version of that. And you'll hear more from Cliff and more from Joe coming up in the Pick 6 at 6. But I think when you're talking about with, Cliff and Terry and getting the ball down the field, one, Cliff's going to be like, yes, he's our best player. We need to find ways to get him the ball. Mm-hmm. 2, he's like, yeah, obviously, never throwing the ball down the field is not a sustainable way to play. So we gotta find those ways. And it's easy to point out, it's harder to solve. But I think, one, they will attempt it more as Jaden gets more comfortable in the NFL, period, and with Cliff, and Cliff gets more comfortable with Jaden. And 2, I think there are opportunities that are there that are just not being taken advantage of. I mean, Luke McCaffrey's missed out on a couple. Nobody's talking about that because it's not a sexy name. He's a third-round pick, like late third-round pick. And no one's like, why isn't Jaden throwing the deep ball to Luke McCaffrey when he's screaming open on a high cross, up the field, or a knife route, or whatever you want to call it, whatever version the terminology is. Like, Luke was open for a touchdown. Luke's been open for a couple touchdowns. If you watch snap in, snap out, Jaden hasn't thrown it. And what other people will say is like, oh, well, he hasn't earned that trust from Jaden. It's like, well, the read says he should throw it. And so I think that as Jaden has more tape underneath them, and he's like, oh, I've seen this before. Luke's open, or Terry, or Diami, or whoever. And there will also be situations where he's picked the 3 receiver side instead of the 1. Who's going to take those one-on-one matchups more often as he gets into the league. So I think that the coaching emphasis will change. I think that Jaden will just become more comfortable. And I think as a result, you'll see some stuff down the field. I do anticipate they'll continue to find creative ways to get the ball to Terry because they know how valuable he is. But if I had to guess one of these 2 being a story in a couple of weeks, my guess would be we're going to be talking about Terry's targets more this year than we are some lack of a deep ball. So that's my prediction, but we'll see. I also think they're going to run the ball a lot on Monday night, so I don't know that Monday night's necessarily going to be the time, but their play action game hasn't been a huge part of what's happened this year, but perhaps that becomes more of a thing on Monday night as well. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That is some thoughts on the Commanders and Bengals, and, well, we have to wait till Monday for that one, so we'll have plenty more thoughts on that on Monday. You'll hear from Whitt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury coming up at 6, but next, we hit every other game in the NFL this weekend. Around the NFL, picks, analysis, we got it all for you next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And it's 5:30. It is a Friday, and even though the Commanders are not playing this weekend until Monday, that's technically next week. That's not this weekend, so to speak. We still have plenty of other games to talk about. And it's 5:30 on a Friday, so I would say it's about that time, eh? And let's hit the magic music and looky there, my man is ready today.
I'm locked in, baby.
Yeah.
I'm locked. I got my game face on. I haven't won a week yet, but it might change this week, Craig.
That is correct. You have not.
I'm putting everybody on notice.
Before you do that, you want to tell us the records?
See, why you got to do that, Craig?
Just as a baseline.
Why do you have to do that? So Craig, hold on. Let me try to understand. Sorry. So Craig is 20-11, and yours truly is 16-15.
How'd we finish last week? Last week was a rough week.
Oh no. That was bad math. We both picked the Eagles. I won 8-8 last. We both went 8-8 last week. Craig, you're actually 19-12, and I'm 15-15. No, okay. I'm 15-16.
So you're still under 500. Not great. Well, we can get you to 500 because we both had the Jets last night. We did not announce that on the show. I did have the Patriots in competition Wednesday, but that was to cover, not to win outright. You had the Jets as well. Aaron Rodgers finally looked like some semblance of the old Aaron Rodgers. The Patriots looked much more like we thought the Patriots were going to look this year. So, yikes on the competition Wednesday, and then covering a 6 or 6.5 doesn't really matter. 24-3 was the final last night, but tack one up for the good guys. Anthony, we're the good guys, and let's keep it going. Picks for the weekend. Giants and Browns. Giants are 0-2. The Browns are 1-1. Cleveland favored by 6.5. Myles Garrett is banged up, but is expected to play. This one should be fairly easy for the Browns because, well, the Giants are about as easy as you get on an NFL schedule these days. But, if they're going to mess around and this offense is going to continue to not be very effective for Cleveland, this game certainly could be within the 6.5 point spread. But by the same token, I think feel pretty comfortable picking Cleveland, which means, of course, New York is going to win because that's how the NFL works. But I'll go Cleveland here.
You're going Cleveland?
Hello, Cleveland.
I want to go Cleveland. I'm a little nervous. Myles Garrett's injury actually does concern me. Who am I fooling, man? I'm not going with the Giants. Give me the Browns.
There's certain teams that I'm probably just not, frankly, going to pick this year. Yeah.
Giants, Panthers.
Well, I was going to say, there's like a hierarchy, right? And if we just like created a 32-team hierarchy and said, this is what our picks are, that wouldn't really work because some teams, obviously injuries, but also home, away, occasionally you might change who's hot, who's playing well. But if we try to do that on a weekly basis, like we just blind ranked 1 through 32 and said, okay, the higher team is going to win. That's our pick. The Giants might only be ahead of the Panthers in terms of a team that would actually pick them. So we just spent too many minutes on the Giants and Browns. Packers and Titans. We might see Jordan Love. If we don't, we'll see the Malik Willis revenge game, if you will. Although he was great this week, Anthony, talking about this. Did you see this quote?
What quote?
From Malik Willis when he was asked about, facing the Titans again.
I did not see it.
So it was like, is this a revenge game, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, man, like I got no hard feelings there. I was paid the entire time. Like we tried our best, didn't work out. And I think that's like, what a pro. That made me like Malik Willis a lot. So whether he plays or not, Tennessee's favored by 3 at home. Titans 0-2 trying to avoid an 0-3 start. Can Will Levis not do something crazy and throw away a game?
That's a great question. I don't have the utmost faith in Will Levis, but I do have faith in the Titans defense. If Malik Willis plays,
I'll let you do a conditional pick.
I have the Titans. If Malik Willis starts at quarterback.
If Jordan Love starts, you have the Packers.
Yes.
Hmm.
Are you going to follow in my footsteps?
It would seem like the prudent thing to do, but honestly, no. I'm just going to take the Packers.
Ooh, okay, Craig.
Honestly, why did I not take this game for Did this line move?
What is the line?
It's -3. I would take Green Bay. I'm taking them outright. Why didn't I take this game on Wednesday? Was I drunk?
Hold on. Is this Titans -3?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, I would take the Packers +3 all day. So, why did I not do that on Wednesday?
Questions that need answers, Craig. I think only you can answer that, though.
I can't. I'd have to go back to Wednesday and see if this line moved, or am I just an idiot? Both are possible, to be honest. All right, I'm taking the Packers. I trust LaFleur. And that's really, honest to God, what it comes down to. I trust LaFleur, and they'll figure it out. Bears and Colts. If you start 0-3, you basically don't make the playoffs. Anthony, you will be in the building.
I will
you see a big blue win?
I will be in the building. And Craig, there was a running joke. All the games that I go to, the team I'm rooting for loses.
It wasn't a joke. It was a real thing.
Well, yeah, it actually was a real thing. But Craig, I'm here to tell you, the last couple of games that I've been to, the team that I've been rooting for, won. So, say it ain't so. Anthony Haney III in Lucas Oil Stadium. Colts get their first dub, baby. Get their first dub, baby.
Is Anthony now, instead of a nightmare maker, a streak buster? Can he be the one that turns the tide?
We'll find out. 1 p.m. Sunday, baby.
God, I just don't think the Colts are starting 0-3. In a vacuum, I want to take the Bears because I like them better.
What would Tony Square say?
He would tell me to take the Bears because he thinks the Colts stink.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. Dude, he sent me something to send to you this week, and I just protected you from it. I just didn't even send it.
Hey, look,
I was like, this feels like bullying. I'm not going to do that to Anthony. I got to be a buffer.
I didn't type in any Colts, any Zaire Franklin. I didn't type anything like that on Twitter just because I already know it was going to be crazy.
It was a Baldy breakdown, and Z was in the hole and
getting pushed around.
No, John was it who did they face last week?
The Packers.
Oh yeah, it was
Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, it was a Josh Jacobs bounce.
Oh,
and it's like, Zaire Franklin's in the hole. Look
Kenny
at Josh
Moore.
Jacobs.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, that feels mean.
Yep.
And I was just like, I like Zaire. I'm not sending that to Anthony.
Man, to be honest, I watched the film during the game and after the game, and it was bad. It was bad on the entire defense. Zaire said he also had a bad game. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, Z knows. We don't have to rub it in. That's the thing. Rarely are we telling football players things they don't know, and if we are, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Or we're wrong because it's not actually true. Point is, I'm going to take the Colts here. I gotta also get away from what I think the Bears can be / what they should be, and look at what they are, which is a mess offensively. So they have got to figure that out. There's definitely a chance that Caleb Williams does because that dude is talented as hell, but so far so not great. Texans and Vikings. There's some injuries on the Texans front in this one that are worth keeping an eye on, including Dameon Pierce, I believe, is going. Yeah, he's out. I'm just pulling it up real quick. Yeah, Joe Mixon's doubtful. Pierce is out. Brevin Jordan, their tight end, put on IR this week. So you're down your top 2 running backs if you're Houston. Meanwhile, Justin Jefferson looks like he's good to go with the quad injury. We'll see how effective he is. But Dallas Turner, the rookie, is out. And on the other side, Jordan Addison is out as a receiver. So they are down a receiver. It's just not Justin Jefferson. 2-0 Vikings hosting 2-0 Texans. Houston -2 is the line. Who you got?
I'm going with the Texans. I understand Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce aren't there, but Cam Akers, when he's had to fill in, he's definitely been productive.
And he knows that McVay. Yeah, he was so awesome for Sean a couple years ago. The McVay-Shanahan tree, and obviously Bobby Slowick's running a similar version of that in Houston.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he's good. But also, even if the run game isn't going well, you have C.J. Stroud. You have Stephon Diggs. You have Tank Dell. You have Nico Collins. you can just lean on the pass, to be honest. We've seen CJ bail them out several times, been able to, deliver from the pocket. So I think the Texans, they're the better overall team. I think they're going to go out here, get the dub.
No, I agree with you on that. I think the Texans are, like, there's also a reality with Sam Darnold that he's going to have a resurgent year. I think he's going to have the best year of his career. I think Kevin's one of them dudes. I've thought that for a long time, and he's proven it. But he's still Sam Darnold. And if you get in a duel with C.J. Stroud, also, we know that Brian Flores likes to blitz. Although I will say, like, Flores has become one of the leaders in the league at what the simulated pressures, which I think a lot of fans have heard of at this point, where you bring 4, but you're not sure which 4. So it's like a different version of like a zone blitz, right? You're dropping guys out, you're bringing different guys to the line of scrimmage. You don't know who's going to bail out. And Flores is real aggressive with that stuff. But if you got your safeties, trying to mug the A gap and then Troy Polamalu it into a cover 2 shell against Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins, like, CJ might just chuck that thing. Because it does leave you, there's a risk involved in that. And so I think there's a chance to make some plays for CJ. So I'm going to Texans as well. Eagles and Saints. Who knew this would be one that,
man,
like, if I pick one, if I got Red Zone on the TV and I got one game on the iPad, Eagles Saints might go on the iPad, bro. New Orleans, 2.5-point favorites at home. Saints 2-0. They've had the best offense, arguably, in all of football. Their defense has also played pretty well. The Eagles, meanwhile, 1-1. Nice bounce back. Nice win on the opener, and then they bounced back into trouble last week with the late loss against the Falcons. I cannot believe this, Anthony, but I am taking the Saints. Like, I think there is a realness to this where, Clint Kubiak is real good as an OC. He's figured out how to put Derek Carr in comfortable positions, and they know that Alvin Kamara is their best player, and they're getting him the football. And they got a bunch of other dudes that are awesome. They got Shaheed. They got Olave. Like, they got dudes in New Orleans, and it's going to be raucous. Like, call me a believer in the Saints.
Dang, Craig. I'm going with the Saints, too.
Part
of the reason I'm going with the Saints.
Oh, no.
Part of the reason I'm going with the Saints, when I watched the Falcons play the Eagles last week, and I just saw them move the Eagles' defensive line, just move them around, I can only envision the Saints doing the same thing because they just did that to Dallas's defensive line. So I think this is going to be a whole bunch of smash mouth football. I think the Saints are going to get after them. Alvin Kamara's probably going to have a big day. I can see the Saints winning a close one. And also A.J. Brown's not playing.
I was going to say, A.J. Brown is out. They've moved James Bradbury to IR, if I'm reading this correctly. No, wasn't he out there last week? Or no, Slay was out there. Bradbury's been out for a while. So, it's they got some issues there. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson's questionable, by the way. Give me the Saints. They're healthier. I think they've been better. Who that say? Gonna beat them Saints.
Yeah.
Not the Eagles, according to us. Chargers and Steelers. This is a tough one to pick, and in part because Justin Herbert is questionable for this game. So if we need to do contingency picks, we can. Both these teams come in 2-0. Smash mouth, attitude. I think that, Harbaugh's mentality is like, okay, TJ Watt, we'll just run it right at you. And that dude can be a problem, but also, like, some of the stuff the Chargers are doing with their jumbo package is crazy. Where, like, traditionally, teams they bring in, like, a 6th offensive lineman, and that guy plays tight end. Well, Anthony, part of what the Chargers are doing is, hey, we're going to bring in a 6th offensive lineman. We'll stick him over at right tackle, and we'll move Joe Alt over to left tackle, and then use Rashawn Slater as our tight end. And stuff like that. So, like, they'll just make Rashawn Slater the jumbo guy and put him at the point of attack. And so, like, you could imagine if we flip what I just said, like, okay, now we got our backup tackle playing left tackle on the backside of a run. And now to deal with TJ Watt, we got Rashawn Slater as the tight end and Joe Alt. And there goes TJ Watt. So there's some stuff they're doing in the run game that is nasty. And obviously, if they're playing a backup quarterback, that's going to become even more important. But I think I want to make a contingency pick here. The more I talk this out, I think if Herbert's in, I want Chargers. If Herbert's out, I want Steelers.
So Chargers, Herbert in. Steelers, Herbert out.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna make a contingency pick. I'm just gonna go with the Steelers outright. I just think defensively it's gonna be too much with a banged up Herbert, and if Herbert isn't in there, then whoever their backup quarterback is gonna just be under a lot of duress. Again, T.J. Watt is a one-man wrecking crew, and I don't think Alex Highsmith gets the credit that he deserves. So I think it's gonna be a defensive battle for sure. But I think the Steelers come out on top. And Craig, for some reason, does Jim Harbaugh give like AFC North Big Ten vibes? Like,
Of course he does.
it's crazy because he's in LA, but he has.
It's
that
so weird that like the Chargers are a smash mouth football team.
Yeah, it's throwing me off a little bit.
It is. Like, hey, you can't play smash mouth and powder blue. What are we doing? By the way, you know who the Chargers backup quarterback is?
Something stick.
Easton Stick. You don't know who his backup is?
Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke is in LA now. I didn't know, I honest to God didn't know that until I just looked up their depth chart. I was like, I'm pretty sure Easton Stick's still the backup. Let me double check. I was like, Heineke's the 3? Yeah, Taylor Heineke is the 3 after he was cut by Atlanta when they got Penix and Kirk and everybody in the preseason. Broncos and Buccaneers still in the 1 o'clock window. This is the last one in the 1 o'clock window on Sunday. 1, 2, 3 Bucks.
Who?
Broncos Bucks, or did I skip a game?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I'm going with the Bucks. My bad.
Okay, excellent. In an effort to keep things moving, now in the 4 o'clock window, Panthers and Raiders. 1, 2, 3
Raiders.
Okay, excellent job, Anthony. Dolphins and Seahawks. This game is far more interesting if the Dolphins quarterback situation isn't Skylar Thompson, with all due respect to Skylar Thompson. Can Mike McDaniel scheme something up, or is this Seattle just overwhelmingly having talent and a healthy quarterback, and that's what you need to win football games?
Can their defense go out there and get a win? I'm not thinking about the off. I don't know. I can't even say that just because we saw what Matt LaFleur did last week with less. I think I'm going to go with the Seahawks, though.
Yeah, at home,
I don't believe
going with the Seahawks, raucous crowd, younger quarterback, inexperienced quarterback. And the other thing is that the Seahawks are pretty physical defensively. And so I am curious, though, because, like, you know, McDaniel has Anthony Weaver on staff, who was with Mike McDonald last year in Baltimore. So there's some insight there. Obviously, it goes both ways. He knows that Mike McDonald knows that defense inside and out, and how he can help his offense attack it. But I am curious to see if Mike McDaniel can say, like, by the way, we have a Mike McDonald versus Mike McDaniel head coach matchup. What dreams are made of. I am curious to see if McDaniel has something funky up his sleeve, try to take advantage of something in that defense. I don't know how much there is to take advantage of. Schematically, obviously some players that need to step up and play well. I'd run a lot at Tariq Woolen. Hey, we're checking to Tariq Woolen's side. Run away from Devin Witherspoon. That's my pro advice.
Woolen's gotten better, though.
As a tackler?
True.
That's run at. Run at. Not throw at, run at. Game of the day, Ravens, Cowboys. Can the Ravens avoid an 0-2 start? If they do, the Cowboys will fall to 1-2. I'm sure there are many folks out there that had this as a potential Super Bowl matchup, Ravens and Cowboys, although not around here. Everyone's like, the Cowboys stink. Like, yeah, we know. You're biased. Cowboys hosting, but they're home dogs. Baltimore favored by 1 on the road. This Baltimore offense, can they put it together against a Cowboys defense that got destroyed by the Saints last week?
I think this game is more important for the Ravens than it is the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys can rebound from a loss to the Ravens. I think the Ravens, they have to put everything on the table and go out there and win this game. Give Derrick Henry the ball 30 times. We just seen what the Saints did. Do it again.
Yeah, I would run straight at the middle of this defense. It's just, I'm taking the Ravens too. I do think Lamar's got to make some plays here, and I do think that it's going to be interesting to see, can the Ravens defense get it together
Man.
and what can Dak and company do. But I'll take the Ravens in this one. I don't have really good reasons. Like, I hate the it means more narrative, but I actually kind of think that the Ravens will play with the level of desperation here that is
They need to.
they need to. 49ers 1-1 on the year. The Rams are 0-2 and mega banged up. They're down Kupp and Nakua. I don't want to 1-2-3 it, but I am taking the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Niners, too. Just not a lot to be desired over there in L.A. on the offensive side of the ball.
I will say the Niners offense without CMC or Debo the last couple of years, it's not the same, and both of them are out. So it is worth
Kittle possibly.
And Kittle. So it's a lot on Brock Purdy's plate. I know Jordan Mason's been great, but man, that is a lot. Lions and Cardinals, low key, one of the games of the day.
Yes.
Cardinals, Kyler looks fantastic, just running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Good to see him doing his thing. Lions coming off the tough loss last week. Detroit favored by 3 on the road. Who you got?
This is so tough. I think I'm gonna go with the Lions and the nail biter. I think the Lions just play too much man defense. I think Marvin Harrison is gonna have himself a day, but I think the Lions are gonna be able to figure it out. Good enough stops and score enough points to go out there and get the dub.
I agree. I think the Lions will bounce back. Also, we haven't talked about this story because I don't know how much original I have to add. The people that found Dan Campbell's house and are doing terrible stuff that made him move.
Yeah,
Dan Campbell's the best thing that's happened to the Lions franchise in 100 years, or at least 50. Bleep you. Seriously, what the hell is wrong with you people? He's literally the best thing that's happened to your franchise since the 1950s. Not named Barry Sanders, and this is what you're doing. Get all the way the hell out of here. What is wrong with people? Parents raised you better. And if they didn't, then I'd like to have a talk. Chiefs and Falcons. Chiefs 2-0. Falcons 1-1 thanks to the miracle on Monday night. Short week. That sucks. But at least they get a short week into Sunday night, and it's at home. I got Kansas City on the road here. I think I even took KC minus the 3 in competition Wednesday. Who you got?
I think I'm gonna go with the Chiefs too. I don't know. I think the Falcons need a couple of more games under their belt to really get everything going. So I think I'm gonna go with the Chiefs.
I expect this to be a close game. This very well might wind up being a push. The KC minus 3 feels like another Mahomes gets the ball late, game-winning field goal type of bit. The Falcons, if I'm the Falcons, I'm somewhat encouraged by the growth of week 1 to week 2. Kirk looked a lot better. The offense looked a lot better. Bijan's having a solid enough season, but they gotta continue to get everybody going. But that's going to take time. And so can you just stay around 500 for the first half of the season and then hope to take off as Kirk gets healthier and healthier and you get more chemistry and things go? All right, quickly, Jags, Bills, 1, 2, 3. Bills. Okay. Commanders, Bengals, obviously the other Monday night game. We will pick that on the show on Monday. When we get back to that game, though, back to Commanders and Bengals, Cliff Kingsbury and Whitt Jr. both spoke today. You will hear from the coordinators in our Pick 6 next. final hour of the Hoffman Show on a Friday here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And 6 o'clock, we hit it 4 times a week. Our Pick 6 at 6 top Commanders headlines. Today's the Thursday edition, if you will, because we have clips for you from both Joe Whitt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury. Everything backed up with Monday Night Football, and let's get right to it.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard the phrase play style, I'd at least have a couple dollars by now because it's been a big, big thing that Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn have talked about since they got here. And that's where we start with number 1.
Number 1.
Joe Whitt was asked specifically, who are the guys that are playing the way that you want your defense to play?
Frankie Louvu, it starts with him. The way he runs and hits. You know, this last game, we won it and it was good. But Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Ben and Quan. I think Quan played really good the first game, even though we didn't play good as a defense. Those 4 men have been playing the play style. Okay. All right, Frankie Louvu runs and hits and puts his body on people in a very violent manner. And we have to get everybody to do that. All right. Quan, the Tampa game, we did not play a good game defensively, but he came out of the post and had some really nice tackles and some space tackles that were hard. So did Percy. They had some space tackles that were hard. Now, we have to get 11 guys doing it every time. And then we talked about playing with a deep crew. When those guys get tired, all right, the next group that come in have to be able to do it. And so, but if you're asking, of plays, Frankie, his whole play style is what we're looking for as a defense from a physicality, run and hit. And I thought Bobby Wagner, I challenged him on some things this past week in the coverage aspect, and he was all over it, man. He played really well this last game. Those 2 men played really well.
I thought the linebackers were better in week 2 than they were in week 1, and I think there's a lot of growth potential, especially for Louvu, because if he can get the pass rush part of his game going, that'd be great. I think they need it. But that physicality piece, the tone setting is there. But noticeably absent from that list is anybody up front. Joe Whitt Jr. also asked today, as we move on to number 2 here in our Pick 6.
Number 2.
About the big 2, about Duran, about John. 2 guys that we've seen play at borderline all-pro, but certainly Pro Bowl levels, who seem to be having some level of a hard time adjusting to this new defense and the new play style. So what's going on there, Joe Whitt Jr.?
About like the rest of us, we're as a defense, we're not where we need to be. I know everybody wants to get enamored in individual player stats and numbers and all that, but we rush as a collective, we play as a collective, and once we start playing better as a collective, individuals, numbers, and all that will increase. But until we, as a collective, play better, it is going to be what it is with certain people's numbers.
I think, one, the numbers are always going to be a little bit fluctuating for what they're asking John and Duran to do and how they're playing, right? We've talked about this a lot this week. If you had a nickel for every time that I said coverage structures this week, you'd also have a couple of dollars. But realistically, when you play with 2 safeties high as opposed to an extra guy in the box, then the double teams get to stick a little bit longer. And who's getting double teamed? It's John Allen and Duran Payne. And they're talking about in the run game here. So they're going to have to be super quick off the snap. But when they do that, it's being used against them with draw plays and trap plays and wham plays, things designed to take advantage of a super aggressive defense. And so it really comes down to those guys having a little bit better play recognition, playing with better leverage, understanding what's happening to them quicker, and then using what the tools in their toolbox to get around it, shrinking down gaps, penetrating, and getting where they need to be even faster at times to make sure that they don't take themselves out of the play, but in fact they can make it. And all those things that are the intricacies of D-line play, winning the hand-to-hand combat, making sure that you don't get pushed quite as far, even a yard here, a yard there. helps other players on your team step up, and then you're in a better situation. So, you give up a big or a little run instead of a big run because you did your job on first down of eating a double team more successfully. Now, eventually you get to a 3rd and long, and now you can go eat as a pass rusher. And that area is where I think they can also grow this group a lot. And I do think there's an opportunity this week for that. Let's get to number 3 along those lines.
Number 3.
Joe Burrow's great. If he has one area of opportunity that I would look at as a defensive coordinator, he does have a tendency to hold the ball back there a little bit, something Joe Whitt was willing to say out loud today.
I think you have to attack his feet and get him moving. He's comfortable. He can throw when he's in the pocket. When you hit him, he keeps his eyes downfield. He's not a guy that necessarily looks at the rush. So, he's a tough man. So we need to be able to move him off the spot. And then when he does scramble, different than Daniel. Daniel typically scrambles to run. He scrambles to throw. And so his eyes are still downfield. So we have to do a great job on the back end of plastering the coverage, because if we pull up, now that's when the explosive plays come to life.
Something from last week that is worth noting is your rush plan as a team. And they need to do everything better when it comes to team defense, but specifically on a rush plan, has to be much more conservative facing a Daniel Jones than a Joe Burrow. Not because Daniel Jones is better, but because he's a better runner. Flushing Daniel Jones in many ways is a win for Daniel Jones. I want Daniel Jones, if I'm a defensive coordinator, to stay in the pocket and throw and try to beat me from there, because I don't think he's good enough to do it. Joe Burrow standing in the pocket and beating me from the pocket is a death wish. So let's take the risk of flushing him out, getting him on the run, narrowing down the parts of the field that are accessible, because he's not Mahomes. He's not going to throw the ball back across his body 50 yards. He's going to, the more he rushes to his right as he rolls, more of the field becomes off limits to him. And so it's less space you have to cover. And again, it's not that I would prefer to face Daniel Jones than Joe Burrow. It's just a different kind of aggressiveness you can bring to your rush, because it's not as big of a deal if a guy gets out and runs. With that said, it allows a little more freedom. And one of the things that I expect to happen more and more this season, especially as Johnny Newton gets back, and especially as Joe Whitt Jr. and Dan Quinn get to know Allen and Payne, is I would expect to see them move around a little bit. We saw it the tiniest amount last week on the line, but is that something that's in play? Joe Whitt asked about that today. Perhaps, Anthony.
It's taking its time right now.
Oh, I hate when it gets a mind of its own.
Yeah.
Because it happens. It's just, that sounded snarkier than I wanted it to be. It's 6:30 or 6:15 on Friday. I'm a little tired. But no, the computer really does sometimes have a mind of its own. But Anthony has wrestled back control. And thus, Joe Whitt Jr. asked about Duron and John moving around on the D-line.
Yeah, we pressured a good bit, and we're going to move guys. People can take one or two guys, well, really one guy away from you with the protection, the way that they want to do it. But like I said, I never said that we're going to come in here and we're going to have two guys rush. We want to rush as a unit, and so we want to put a wave at them, and we have to do a better job of, if we have a pressure call, don't be selfish at all in any kind of way. Run the pressure, because if you get out of your lane, you're knocking somebody else off. And so just like on the back end, we have to cover as a collective. We have to rush as a collective.
And you can see that happening on tape too. You can see hey, Duron jump, and I don't know who's right or wrong, but you see like Duron jumps inside, Luvu jumps outside, and now we got a big rush. We got a muddle on one side that's easy to block, and we got a whole bunch of space on the other side that's an easy escape lane. Or sometimes these pressures were called, and the Giants wound up running the football, and now you have a gigantic lane because these two guys haven't communicated a rush plan together. And this blitz that also might have been kind of a run blitzy type of thing, instead of becoming hard to block for the Giants, became real easy, and you got an explosive play given up. So you got to be really smart with how you execute these things. You have to be really disciplined as a defense and make things hard for an offensive line, and they just didn't really do a great job of that last week. They did a better job in week 1 and then couldn't finish. So we'll see if they can get back on track here in week 3 against Cincinnati. When we get back, you'll hear from Cliff Kingsbury on the back half of our Pick 6, including him answering everyone's favorite question this week. how do you get Terry McLaurin the football more? You got to hear what Cliff said because I thought it was both snarky and good. Next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And we pick up our pick six at 6. We give you the biggest headlines in the Commanders universe each and every day at 6 o'clock. The typical Thursday edition where we hear from the coordinators, now moved to Friday with Monday Night Football because, well, the coordinators spoke today. We couldn't give it to you yesterday because Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels spoke. If you missed that, by the way, and you want to hear what JD and DQ had to say, you can check out the Hoffman Show podcast, or that segment is online on YouTube at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. Of course, Jaden Daniels, a lot of the questions to Cliff Kingsbury are about him. And I think one of the storylines that's fun to watch for this team is the building of an offense around a young quarterback and how that fits in context with what the rest of the league is doing. And that's where we start the Cliff half of the pick 6 with number 4.
Number 4.
And how Cliff thinks that progression is going with Jaden Daniels so far.
Yeah, we'll keep building. The whole year is going to be a learning process, and continue to try and play to his strengths and maximize, who we are with our personnel. But I've been really impressed with his operation, like I said, after week 1, and protecting the football and making plays when he had to. I thought last week you get a 2-minute drive in that situation to win the game. He went down and won the game after a frustrating day for all of us not getting the end zone. He didn't blink. He was ready in that moment, and that says a lot about who he is as a competitor and what he's going to bring to this organization.
I think that some of the consternation about Jaden not throwing deep more and this offense not being more explosive is ridiculously overblown, if I'm being completely honest. And some of it's coming from people who I like, respect, think are smart, and I totally understand why they're getting it or why they're saying it, because it's not sustainable in the long term. They do need to do more of it. But I do very much think of quarterbacking like almost a video game where you have to beat one level at a time. You can't skip ahead and just be like, give me the final boss. You could. You're probably going to get your ass kicked. So don't do that. Play the level that you're on. And I think Cliff has done a good job of, sure, maybe underselling Jaden a little bit. Maybe he's capable of a little bit more. But I'd rather undershoot than overshoot. And especially if you're 1-1, and especially if you had 12 of 15 drives that ended in either field goal attempts or touchdowns. That's sensational. That is what you want. You got to clean up the finish to make more of those touchdowns. They obviously signed Austin Seibert to make more of those field goals good compared to Cade York in week 1 where they were not good. But at the end of the day, I think there are bigger problems on this team than Cliff Kingsbury, even bigger problems with this offense potentially than Cliff Kingsbury's play calling and the conservative nature of it. The screens, I know some of y'all are sick of it. I get it. Is this the optimized version of what this offense can be eventually? No, it'll have less of that. But they serve a purpose to create horizontal space. They serve a purpose to give Jaden easy throws. They serve a purpose to keep the offense on schedule, and they serve a purpose to limit the amount of risk so they're not turning the football over. Because the last part of this that I'll say is it's not just about Jaden. They're also playing a conservative brand of football because their defense is not where they need it to be more aggressive. They can't lean on the fact that their defense is going to go get a stop or turn the football over. And so they need to make sure they keep the ball for 37 minutes if they want to have a chance to win like they did against the Giants. You don't think that has something to do with it? Hey, let's make sure the clock is running. Let's make sure we get completions. Let's make sure we're running the football. There's a game management part of this that is coming from the top, and that kind of complementary football is something that, frankly, I think has been missing, and certainly was missing last year when you had an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator that didn't seem to realize that they needed to think about what the other one was doing in order to actually have a chance to win a football game. And, they won 4 football games, so that's not good. Meanwhile, the other big story of the week when it comes to the offense.
Number 5.
I'll set it up this way. Hey, Cliff Kingsbury, why isn't Terry McLaurin getting the ball more?
Yeah, I mean, defense coordinators are smart. They're going to try to take him away. There's no doubt. And, that's my job to find ways to answer that. And so far, I haven't done a great job of it. And, as a staff and me, we got to be better moving forward.
Respect on Cliff for saying, I got to do better. Not, it's not a problem. Hey, other guys are getting involved. There's other stuff. I do really genuinely appreciate the fact that there's not excuses being made. But, Anthony, can you play the first 2-3 seconds of that again for me, please?
Yeah, I mean, defense coordinators are smart.
That's good. Can we cut that and can I put that on my soundboard? Can I just have defensive coordinators are smart on the soundboard moving forward? Because that is kind of the really funny thing about this, Ant, is, oh, how could Terry's the only guy they got? How come they can't get him the ball? If we all know that, don't you think the defense knows it too? It just... I don't get it sometimes, Anthony. I don't get it. Are you cutting it right now? You saving that little defensive coordinators are smart?
Yeah, I mean, defensive coordinators are smart.
We can even cut it down. Just take the
I was about to say I'm about to shorten it.
Come on. Let's get that. Just do a little choppy.
Coordinators are smart. I mean, defense coordinators are smart.
That's on the board. Meanwhile, there is, of course, a balance between getting your star player the ball and making sure your offense is functioning and the ball's going where the coverage dictates and where there are opportunities that aren't just your star player, which Cliff also was asked about that balance today.
Yeah, it's a fine line you walk. Like I said, one of the best things he's done is operate and get the ball to the right spot and take care of it. And so at some point, we got to find a way to get Terry the football, and it really comes down to scheme and me, getting him in the right spots to do that. But I think Jaden has executed the offense, as well. I mean, beyond what we could have anticipated for a rookie in his first two starts against good defenses. So yeah, it'll come. I'm not worried that connection will get there. It's just, Terry deserves to get the ball. He's like I said, one of the best players in the league, and I got to do a good job getting it to him.
I think what Cliff is struggling there is the balance. And I genuinely appreciate the kind of reality that he operates in, or seemingly is operating in, that there is what they want it to be. Because I think it would be really easy for Cliff to say, hey, we've drawn some stuff up. Jaden hasn't necessarily seen it. Defenses have maybe covered some things. Even there's some times where it feels like they lucked into covering it. Guy got out of position, but it was out of position in a way that covered Terry. Like, there's all kinds of things he could say beyond complimenting his quarterback and being like, hey, Jaden realistically has done a good job. And what I think that is acknowledging that some of the touches that he might scheme up for Terry that rely on Jaden getting the ball to him through a progression, he's just got to say, if my point in calling this play is not to call the play against the coverage, but to get Terry a touch, I got to do it differently. Like, he's still a rookie. He's executing at a higher level than we anticipate, or we could have anticipated, but that level is still not NFL veteran because he's played 2 games. And I've dropped, there's been like 10 snaps, 15 snaps of pure drop back. He doesn't have the mental bank of coverages and looks to be able to hit it right at a 80, 90% clip like guys that have been around for years do. And so if we want to get Terry the ball, instead of calling something where there's a chance if it gets read out right and they're playing the coverage that we think that he could get it, let's just give it to him. Let's just, whether it's a screen, a pop pass, an end around, some kind of 3-by-1 where there's an option for Terry to get the ball no matter what as an isolated receiver. Like, there are things you can do to make sure your guy gets the ball, and I do think Cliff will lean a little bit more into that. Last but not least, good perspective, though, and I'm glad someone asked this question of the coordinators today. This is all within the context of a trend that's happening around the league. Anthony, if we could, number 6.
Number 6.
So there's actually a decrease in passing around the league in general. And Joe Whitt was actually asked about this from a defensive side and why he thinks it's happening.
I mean, I really don't want to get into that, to be honest with you, but you can all start with the college game if you want to say, because when you look back, when I first got in the league, you had quarterbacks that grew up in systems, and there was traditional learning where to send the ball and how to send it, and now everything goes so fast in college. So when they get up here, it takes them a little bit of time to learn where they're sending the ball in the progressions. And so, but I'm not really worried about that, man. I'm worried about stopping these Cincinnati Bengals. All right, so.
One guy that does that pretty well is Joe Burrow. So I get Joe not wanting to talk about it more. But I think the other part of it is the way the contracts work now. There's a lot more young players playing in the league. And like the guys like Geno Smith are so rare. a guy who doesn't work out when he's younger, or probably should have sat when he was younger and eventually is sat when he's younger, that works his way up and becomes kind of like the middle class of the NFL that actually is pretty good. That like week in, week out certainly is not Pat Mahomes, but like you can win with Geno Smith. And teams don't really sign guys like that unless they sign it exactly like Geno did. They sign him as a backup. He gets a chance to play. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, this guy can play. Like we should make him our starter. And you kind of almost have to have the opportunity due to injury. Like you have to luck into that in some way. You have to sign a guy as a backup, or like Tampa signs Baker to compete with Kyle Trask, the guy they hope wins the job as a young guy, and then Baker goes out and balls, and you're like, oh, okay, well, now we'll give you a decent contract. And because you don't have that middle class, like the quarterbacking skill level is just lower because you have so many young dudes who are inexperienced playing, or the GOATs. And so week to week, you are facing Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, etc., or you're facing some young guy who hasn't really played a whole lot. And the nature of how the contracts work and teams, trying to be on that rookie quarterback timeline, which is so valuable, I think it's changed the dynamic in the NFL, as well as what Joe just talked about, as well as some of the way that teams are playing in coverage, which is the part I'm sure he doesn't want to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. It's the Hoffman Show. That's our Pick 6. 6 big headlines every single day at 6 o'clock around the Commanders. You can check them out live on the radio, of course, at 6, or if you happen to miss it on any given day, make sure you check it out on demand in the Hoffman Show podcast. When we get back, a quick weekend preview, and then we get up on out of here on a Friday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980. Quick weekend preview before we get up on out of here in about 20 minutes or so. BetMGM tonight next. Or Anthony, tonight's a Terps Talk night, isn't it? Got that wacky, long final segment. They're trying to keep us. The man is trying to keep us down.
Yes.
But you know what that means?
We have a longer real thing.
It means we have lots of time for real things, which I'm actually kind of excited about because I feel like we've been shorting real things lately.
Yep.
So that's on us. That's on us. We've been getting really excited about other stuff. There's so much to talk about. It's football season.
It's too much.
Playoff season, and well, hey, looks like it's a weekend preview time. We could tell everybody everything that's happening. Let's get to it, Anthony. College football slate starts tonight with our alma mater, Syracuse Stanford. Pop quiz. Is this a conference matchup?
Oh, hold on. That is a great question. No.
I believe it is. I think this
It
is now
is!
this is an ACC matchup tonight, right?
This is crazy. Let's take a look.
The point is, we cover sports for a living. This is our alma mater, and we don't know.
ACC?
Something is broken.
Wow. Stanford?
Stanford's in the ACC now, right? I didn't make that up.
Oh, no, you're actually you're right.
Yeah, Stanford 1-1 on the year. First ACC. This is Syracuse is welcoming Stanford to the ACC tonight. This is Stanford's first ACC game. That famous school from Palo Alto, California, in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Wow. Makes no sense to me, but I'm excited for the game.
I am too. By the way, I was today years old when I found out that we have Aronde Gadsden II at tight end because I remember watching Aronde Gadsden at the time. It's just Aronde Gadsden. I guess he's probably senior now or the first.
Oh, I don't even know who the first is. I know who the second is. He's a converted tight end from wide receiver. He's nasty, though. I've been
big
on
fella, 6'5".
This guy, 2 years. Well, last year he was hurt, but
yeah, I actually do think I remember that he played last year. Yeah, but Aronde Gadsden was a wide receiver who played for the Cowboys and the Dolphins back in the day. He also played for the Frankfurt Galaxy of the World League of American Football and the Portland Forest Dragons of the Arena Football League.
you learn something new every day.
Yeah,
Every day.
But now his son is the number one thing that you get in the Google results. And he's playing for Syracuse tonight against Stanford in an ACC conference game because we live in college football hell. Tennessee, Oklahoma. Doug, is this a conference game, Anthony?
Man. Is it a conference game? Great question. To be honest, if Syracuse is playing Stanford tonight, maybe all the teams are finally in conference play. I'm going to say yeah.
Yeah, it's an SEC game because Oklahoma and Texas are in the SEC now.
I don't know where none of these teams are.
Yeah.
We need to play that game again also.
Yeah, we could have Denton back to play what conference are these teams in anytime. Sure. We'll get a bunch of them wrong. But Tennessee and Oklahoma are playing a conference game. But Tennessee is having a heck of a season so far, and they've actually received a lot of love nationally, Anthony, for how they've handled NIL. Not necessarily that everyone's like, oh, look at the morality of it. The way I said that kind of set that up. No, like they were smarter than everyone else. They had money ready in funds and like smart ways to distribute it, and they've done a really good job recruiting in the new the new universe that we live in, where Oklahoma's in the SEC. And so first, huge test for them this season will be as they go on the road at Oklahoma, number 15 team in the country, tomorrow night at 7:30.
Yeah, that's going to be a hell of a game. James Pierce, arguably one of the top defensive players. He's on that defensive line. So I play NCAA, Craig, and that is one of my favorite teams to use. Tennessee, just because of that guy. But also I like their quarterback. He's really athletic. They got some wide receivers. This is going to be a crazy game tomorrow night. Crazy.
Colorado playing its first Big 12 game in forever. Of course, they left the Big 12 for the Pac-12, and then it was the Pac no more. They packed up and went home. See what I did there, Anthony? So Colorado on the road at Baylor tomorrow night. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on on that Colorado program right now. I think the pressure is going to crank up way more after this year when Shador and Hunter leave. But for right now, like, they've talked a lot. Everyone's like, oh, they got these great players, but I think there's a lot of questions. And so they get into conference play. It's got to go better for Deion than it did last year. Not only like, it's one thing to like, hey, keep your job, be in the spotlight, whatever, but like, if you want to continue to grow your program, there's just a lot. Like the tide is turning on Deion, and not in the way that some people thought it would last year in terms of like narrative. Substantively, I think people are like, oh, they got real football problems. And I don't know if I want to be a part of that program if they got football problems, if I'm a player in the recruiting world. So I think this is a huge stretch of games for Deion here, getting started in Big 12 play.
Yeah, I think every game is going to be huge for them. Every game, they're in prime time. Like, who would have thought 2 unranked teams, Colorado, Baylor, 8 p.m., getting, this slot. So I just think as long as they continue to deliver, because I looked up who they play next week and what time they play, and everything just says TBD, TBD, TBD.
That's the nature of college football, though, for the most part.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to just like Colorado and in general, they want everybody to see them. So
yeah, no, for sure.
They got to win, though. They got to win.
Lastly, in the weekend preview, other local action. Spirit are in action tonight. They've already clinched a playoff spot, but they are facing a team that they could certainly see in the playoffs tonight. Kansas City Current down to 4th in the NWSL table. They were in 2nd most of the year. They've now been leapfrogged by the Spirit and defending champion Gotham. Last time these two teams played, Anthony, the Spirit absolutely whipped them. It was 4-1. Just a thoroughly dominant performance. So should be fun to watch that one tonight, 8 o'clock on Amazon Prime.
I wasn't there, was I?
I don't believe you were there for that one.
Okay, just making sure. Because I don't think I've had the chance to witness the Spirit win a game.
Yeah, we can.
We need to rectify that.
Yeah, there's a couple more home games this year. Although I will say they're not particularly well timed for those of us that have to work or watch football. So like I might miss some games. Also, when the Spirit get in the playoffs, there's a chance that I'm just gonna have to watch a Commanders game later because I'm not missing playoff games, bro. We're not doing that. But
Playoffs.
It's playoffs. But the Spirit are in action tonight. Of course, the Nats, they're wrapping up their season over the next couple of weeks. They lost today to the Cubs, and they will be back in action tomorrow at Chicago at 2:20 p.m. They are cruising a 5-game losing streak, got swept by the Mets, lost the first 2 to the Cubs. So far, Cubs, by the way, is trying to stay alive in the NL playoff picture, staved off elimination with their win over the Nats today. That is our weekend preview, brought to you by
nobody, Craig.
That is correct. The one thing we did leave out, the WNBA playoffs. If you want a full WNBA playoff preview, I recorded it today with my pal Lindsay D'Arcangelo on the Hoffman W Sports WNBA show. As you can search Hoffman W Sports wherever you get your pods. Anthony, what we did 4 minutes per series because there's 4 series. So we were like, every series, 4 minutes or less. And we tackled one other big topic, which is why the hell is the WNBA having their big 4-game opening playoff day on an NFL Sunday? What are we doing? Just an absolutely boneheaded marketing decision. Another one by this league. They can't get out of its own way. So we talked about that, and then we did, 16 minutes worth of preview. So you can check that out at Hoffman W Sports or search Hoffman Women's Sports in your favorite podcast app. But definitely something that I'll be locked into Sunday. Since the Commanders aren't playing, multi-screens, can throw the W on one of them or multiple of them. I'm going to see how Sunday's going to need a lot of screens, man. We got a lot of stuff happening.
I'm trying to think when the best time the WNBA could have actually started their playoffs.
Easy. Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. But like, what happens when you get to the weekends? Because Saturday you got.
I would rather go up against college football than the NFL any day, anytime. Not even remotely close. 2, like ESPN, ABC is the home of the WNBA playoffs.
Yeah,
they have Monday Night Football doubleheader on Monday night.
Yep.
You go Tuesday and you promote the hell out of the playoffs on Monday night. People are into it. People want to watch. You just can't put it behind the things that they want to watch more. And the NFL is the thing that in this country sports fans want to watch most. It's simple. I know they want the TV windows because they want hey, we can get 3 o'clock on ABC on a Sunday, and it'll get 1 million plus viewers. Like, the game will do okay, but it would get 3 million if there wasn't an NFL Sunday.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Like, for instance, the 3 o'clock game on ABC on Sunday is Caitlin Clark's first playoff game. By the way, they're taking on the Sun. That is going to be a bloodbath of a series, and I cannot wait.
Dejanay, she got her work cut out for her.
She does, and she is not guarding the same Caitlin Clark she did when she dominated her early in the season. It's going to be a lot of fun, that series. But again, the previews in the W Sports podcast. When we get back, though, we got plenty of time, so we'll get to it. Real things, real people said, into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Yes, we are looking forward to the weekend. Anthony is doing the most this weekend. I am doing the least, and we are both excited about that, respectively. Favorite part of the show today, Ant, real quick, that we can tell people, hey, check this out this weekend if you want some podcasting to listen to. Whoa, Anthony's got to fix his headphones. He got caught on the chair.
Favorite part. Oh, favorite part, not favorite. Favorite
Definitely wasn't one of those on the show today.
Well, not in your studio. So I'm joking.
Hey, you're there by yourself. I'm over here by myself. Whatever happens, happens, as long as it doesn't make the air.
My favorite part probably was, I'm gonna have to go. I like our pick six today. I like Joe Whitt.
I did too.
Even the beginning of the show, talking about the brand and style of football we want to play, and Joe Whitt singling out those four players. I think that was my favorite part, just because we need more of that, and we need more dogs, man.
They need the dudes to play like dogs. They need to get after it. So good stuff. I thought Joe Whitt was awesome today. I thought it was one of my favorite press conferences of his so far. I've enjoyed Cliff too. I actually really genuinely enjoy the coordinators, as opposed to last year where you got Bieniemy soliloquies and nothing from Del Rio. I've enjoyed hearing both guys talk this year. All right, let's get to it. We've got a bunch of great stuff, including the closest I've ever felt to Jim Nantz, and real things, real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
But first, this clip made the rounds. Adrian Wojnarowski retired earlier this week, and it was like, hey, why did Woj retire? And Adam Schefter and Jeff Passan and, oh, God, who's the other one that was on there? There's another, three of ESPN's top insiders joined Malik Andrews on NBA Today, and Adam Schefter summed it up as best as he could, what their lives are like as insiders.
We talked about this, and basically, he wanted his life back. He didn't want to have to work on holidays. He didn't want to be away from more family gatherings. He didn't want to have to, as we had to do in the past, take a shower with your phone up against the shower door so you could see a text that's coming in, or take your phone with you to the urinal and hold it in one hand while you're trying to take care of your business in the other. That's the life that we live. And that was a life that he chose not to do any longer, because it takes over your life. You can't kind of do the job. You have to live the job. And he was done living the job. He wants to go live his life and work for his school and give back to younger athletes and help people beyond what he's done at the highest of high levels for however long he's done it. It's enough. He's had enough, and he gets to go out on his terms after he crushed it in free agency, after he crushed it during his career, and now he gets to do what he wants, which is exactly how it should be.
I mean, if that's the full story, I'm in. And do I think that's the entirety of the full story? There's some other stuff floating out there, power struggles, all the usual kind of stuff. But I will say, you can't. Schefter's right on. You can't kind of do that job. And I saw a quote, I think, from Bill Simmons' pod going around, where Simmons is like, "Oh, was he curing cancer, or was he a ER nurse during COVID?" And I'm like, you can respect that it's a really hard job without being an inhumane jerk about it. And so I thought that was super weak from Simmons and felt much more personal, like maybe Bill knows something else. But the one question I have, Ant, is why do these guys not have Apple Watches? You don't need to smash your phone up to the shower. They make a watch, it'll tell you. Or this Garmin that I'm wearing. All the smartwatches, you can get your alerts.
Craig, they're not millennials though, man. We are. We
It's so easy. They can wear a watch.
I'm just saying it's easier for us to navigate technology than it is for those guys.
I am sad though that we spent that long on that, because now we don't have time to play the Nantz clip. Basically, Nantz was asked what the musts are for him at a football game, and he's like, at halftime I have to have a hot dog. And I've never felt like Jim Nantz and I are more the same person than that. That's our show. We'll see ya on Monday.